Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at which MCU entries are required for a Doomsday rewatch. We'll be looking at everything across the entire multiverse. So there will be mild spoilers for pretty much everything that's ever come out, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a January contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. We also have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out. Plus, hang around to the end of the video, and we'll talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord. All right, so we know about the 27 characters that are definitely going to be showing up in Doomsday, thanks to Chair Watch. And actually, we got number 28 down in the lower right-hand corner when Franklin Richards was revealed on the duffel bag. Then in the latest trailers, we've seen Steve Rogers, Love, and Namora are all returning. So obviously anything that deals with these characters is going to be on the rewatch list. But let's start way back at the beginning. Let's go all the way back to the pre-MCU multiversal films. These are the years they came out, and decide whether we should watch any of these movies. Now, honestly speaking, I don't think they're going to show up in Doomsday. I see a lot of these more happening in Secret Wars, but certainly at some point, we're going to see Lou Ferrigno's Hulk return. We have to, right? That would be incredible. We'll hopefully see the return of the cheesy Captain America from the late 70s and the one from 1990. We gotta have an appearance by the live-action Howard the Duck in that same awful outfit from the movie produced by George Lucas himself. Would be awesome if we got a Dolph Lundgren appearance as the Punisher, and yeah, David Hasselhoff actually played Nick Fury at one point. So really just knowing that these movies and shows exist is probably enough. You don't need to rewatch these, and honestly, I don't think these characters are showing up in Doomsday. I think they're going to be saved for Secret Wars. However, I'm still holding out hope that maybe we get a Council of Reeds, but it kind of feels like the train has left the station on that, so you don't really need to watch this Fantastic Four movie from 1994. In fact, theoretically, you shouldn't be able to watch it because it was never officially released, and I even got a copyright strike on my channel when I tried to do a review of it. Now, Blade, I'm going to talk about him more when we get to our next image. So, speaking of, here are the more modern movies and shows going all the way up to MODOK, Hitmonkey, and Moon Girl, which are part of the greater multiverse, right? Okay, so which of these should you maybe watch? All right, so I said I was going to talk about Blade. I really don't know that you need to watch any of the 3 earlier movies because he shows up in Deadpool and Wolverine, and that really tells you everything you need to know about him. Likewise, Elektra shows up in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I don't know if we're ever going to see Ben Affleck's Daredevil return. And then Fantastic Four, we saw Johnny Storm return in Deadpool and Wolverine. And like I mentioned earlier, I just don't think we're going to get a Council of Reeds, so I don't know that you need to watch any of these movies. And then, of course, Punisher was at least alluded to during Deadpool and Wolverine, and the Russian showed up. So, I don't know, you probably don't need to watch Thomas Jane's Punisher movie either. So these are all movies I would have recommended rewatching before Deadpool and Wolverine, but now that that's come out, I don't think you need to watch them again. And then I'm going to stick to my theory that we're not going to get a Council of Reeds, so there's no reason to watch Fant Four Stick. Plus, it's not a good movie at all, like as in, it's bad. So I'm really torn on the Ghost Rider movies. I could see Nick Cage showing up in Doomsday, but I could also see them holding off until Secret Wars. So I'm on the fence. Maybe you should watch at least the first Ghost Rider movie and prep for Doomsday, but I'm going to bet he doesn't show up till Secret Wars. Likewise, Eric Bana's Hulk could probably show up in Secret Wars, and maybe even that crazy Man-Thing from the 2005 movie. Dude needs a haircut, big time. But yeah, it was actually a full-fledged horror movie, and probably worth your watch anyway, but I don't see him showing up in Doomsday. Maybe in Secret Wars. All right, so for the most part, I don't think you need to watch any of these movies in preparation for Doomsday. I think these characters may show up in Secret Wars, but really, you don't need to watch them for Doomsday. All right, what about the Sony Spider-Man movies? Well, you could argue that you don't need to watch the Tobey or the Andrew movies because No Way Home brings you up to speed on those characters and what they've been up to. So rewatch them if you want, but I don't think they're required. I don't think you need to rewatch the Venom movies because I don't see Tom Hardy showing up, and technically No Way Home gives you a brief appearance by Tom Hardy as well as the Goo. No way you need to watch Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven. Those characters ain't showing up, not in Doomsday, not in Secret Wars. Never again will we see them. And then the Spider-Verse movies, there was at one point talk about Beyond the Spider-Verse and the Kang Dynasty movie actually crossing over, but at this point, I don't see it happening, so they're optional. You know, they're great movies, so watch them if you want to, but optional for Doomsday rewatch. Okay, what about the X-Men movies? We know that several X-Men characters are appearing. So which of these movies do I recommend you watching? Well, I would say that the younger cast isn't going to show up. I just don't think they have time and it's too complicated. I could maybe see them showing up in Secret Wars because I would love it if Fassbender and McAvoy became the new Magneto and Professor X for Phase 7 and beyond. But I don't see them showing up in Doomsday. You don't need to watch The Gifted. Good show, but those characters are not showing up. Likewise, New Mutants, I don't think they're showing up, although, man, if Anna Taylor-Joy's magic were to show up, I would be so happy. Then we have the Deadpool movies. I don't think you need to rewatch any of these because Deadpool and Wolverine really brings you up to speed on his character. All right, now we're down to the 7 OG X-Men movies. We know several of these characters are showing up, so which ones do I think you should rewatch? Honestly, I think if you just watched X2, which has pretty much every character, most importantly, Nightcrawler, and you watch Days of Future Past, now you would get Beast, who's the only character that didn't show up in X2, but is showing up in Doomsday. And then Logan, because I'm going to recommend Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously, and Logan feeds right into it. So you could probably get away with just watching these 3, and you would know everything you need to know about the X-Men. All right, so what about the Marvel television shows? So we'll start by talking about the 6 Netflix shows, which have now been added to the Disney Plus timeline, so they are official MCU canon, but I don't imagine any of these characters are showing up in Doomsday, probably not in Secret Wars either. So don't need to rewatch them, even though some of them are just absolutely fantastic. Daredevil Season 1, Jessica Jones Season 1, 2 of the best seasons of Marvel television ever. All right, what about the ABC shows? Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Slingshot, Inhumans, etc.? I don't think these characters are showing up in Doomsday, but I will be so annoyed if we don't at least see the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. showing up in Secret Wars. So do I think you need to rewatch them for Doomsday? No. Secret Wars? Please, Marvel, please. And then finally, we have Cloak and Dagger, Runaways, and Hellstrom. All really good shows, but I don't see these characters showing up again, sadly, ever. So really, none of the Marvel television shows need to be rewatched to prepare for Doomsday. All right, now it starts to get interesting. What about the Infinity Saga? And notice I'm including Eyes of Wakanda and Black Widow in the Infinity Saga, even though they came out during the Multiverse Saga, but of course, chronologically, they happen as part of the Infinity Saga. Okay, so I don't think you need to rewatch anything in the Infinity Saga other than Infinity War and Endgame. Endgame, because we know that Steve Rogers is returning, and it pretty much looks like Doomsday is a sequel to Endgame. And then if you're going to watch Endgame, you kind of got to watch Infinity War because they're so tied together. So these are the only 2 that I put on the recommended rewatch list. Then we get to the Multiverse Saga. All right, it's going to get interesting now. So I'm going to look at first the ones that I think can be skipped. And I'm going to start with a pretty obvious one, What If and Marvel Zombies. I mean, I think the Watcher could show up in Doomsday, but if so, you won't need to have watched What If to have understood his character. He's just the Watcher. And then the zombies could show up in Secret Wars, but I don't think they're going to be in Doomsday. Then we have Secret Invasion. Don't need to rewatch this. Nothing will be referenced. Enough said. All right, then we have Werewolf by Night and Moon Knight. I just don't see these characters showing up, unfortunately. I think they're going to save them for Midnight Suns in Phase 7. Then we have Echo. Yeah, she's not showing up. Maybe she's going to show up in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, but she won't be showing up in Doomsday. Then we have She-Hulk. Now, I do see She-Hulk showing up in Doomsday, but I don't think you need to watch her show to understand her character. I mean, she's pretty much a female Hulk, so don't need to watch her show. Then we have Miss Marvel. Same case as She-Hulk. I think she might show up, but you don't need to watch the show to understand her character. Plus, I am going to recommend The Marvels, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about her. Then we have Ironheart. I don't think Ironheart's going to show up. I mean, I've been talking about how I want the Young Avengers and the Champions to appear, but it really feels like we won't see them until maybe Secret Wars or perhaps after Secret Wars in Phase 7. Then we have the Eternals. So this is the first movie on my list that you don't need to rewatch because I don't think these characters are going to show up, and I don't think Tiamat is going to matter. So yeah, don't need to watch the movie, even though it is really good and highly underrated. Then this next one is painful, but I am going to put the Guardians Holiday Special and Guardians Volume 3 on the list. Now, why am I doing that? I just don't think there is time in the movie for the Guardians to appear. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I don't think we're going to see them until Secret Wars or maybe not until Phase 7. So yeah, believe it or not, I'm putting them on the don't need to rewatch. Then we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't think you need to watch this series because everything you need to know about Sam and Bucky, you learn from Brave New World and Thunderbolts. So you can skip Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Then we have Daredevil Born Again and the Punisher Special Presentation. I already mentioned earlier that I don't think the Netflix characters are going to show up in Doomsday. I'm kind of bummed about that, but I just don't think it's going to happen. You can skip these. Then we have Hawkeye. So it does introduce Kate Bishop, but as I've been kind of alluding with the Young Avengers / Champions, I don't think we see them until Secret Wars or maybe Phase 7, so you don't need to watch it for that reason. And then for Hawkeye, honestly, his character didn't change that much throughout the series. He just resolved the Ronin situation, but otherwise, if he does show up in Doomsday, you won't have missed anything if you skip this series. And then we have Wonder Man. This kind of falls in that category of we don't know what we don't know, so I'm going to kind of guess that Wonder Man is not going to show up in Doomsday, and maybe we'll see him in Secret Wars, and certainly we'll see him in Phase 7 and beyond. And then, oh man, this one is the most painful for me. If you've watched my ranking videos, you're going to be surprised perhaps, but I'm going to put the trio on there. WandaVision, Agatha All Along, and Vision Quest. I don't think you need to watch any of these. Even though I love WandaVision, her journey can be summarized in Multiverse of Madness because that showed that the Darkhold got a hold of her, made her go searching for her kids, and then she died, seemingly. So I don't think you need to watch that. Agatha, I don't think she's going to show up in Doomsday. Fantastic series, but I don't see her showing up. And then Vision Quest is another one that we just don't know, but I would kind of be surprised if Vision shows up in Doomsday. I don't see him showing up until Secret Wars, maybe forming the Young Avengers / Champions, because we know Billy and Tommy are going to show up in Vision Quest. So we'll have to wait and see, but at this point, I'm going to say all three of these do not need to be watched. Okay, an interesting thing to point out. Other than these two entries, Eternals and Guardians 3, everything on here is a TV show. And this kind of goes with what Feige's been saying, which is, the movies are the main things you need to watch. The TV shows tell us the emotional journeys the characters have been on, so they're very important, especially for us superfans. We want to watch all this. But these are things you probably can skip because most of their journeys are summarized when they show up in the movies. All right, so now on to the entries that should be rewatched. And right off the bat, we got to talk about Loki, right? It's the only TV show that I'm recommending you rewatch, but you got to see it, right? You got to follow his journey, but you also got to understand, why is he holding together the 616 multiversal tree? What did his sacrifice mean? Why is it so important? So yeah, this is one you can't skip. Then we have Shang-Chi. Gives us a brand new character, obviously Shang-Chi himself, but also the 10 rings and that mysterious signal that we saw at the end of the movie. Then we have the 3 Spider-Man movies in the Multiverse Saga. So I'm really torn on this. I don't know whether Tom Holland is going to show up. I mean, I try to stay away from the leaks and the rumors, but the fact that he wasn't in Chair Watch and he's such a huge name makes me think he's not going to show up. But in case he does, I'm going to include these 3 movies. Plus, No Way Home brings back Toby and Andrew. It's multiversal. It's really important. So, all right, I'm going to keep those on the list. Then we have Wakanda Forever. Really important movie. Shuri becomes Black Panther. M'Baku becomes the king of Wakanda. And, of course, we meet Namor. And then we have Multiverse of Madness. Now, this one's really important because this explained a lot of the rules of how the multiverse works, right? Incursions, we met variants, we saw all those weird universes like Cube and Paint, and then, of course, he had that freaky deaky eye at the end of the movie, and we learned about some incursion that he created. Then we have The Marvels. Very underrated movie. I mean, not the best movie out there, but still a lot of fun. But why should you watch it? Well, we catch up with Carol. In case you didn't watch the Ms. Marvel TV show, you meet Kamala Khan. And then if you didn't watch WandaVision, you meet Monica. And most importantly, you learn that she's in a different universe, the X-Men universe, and we meet Beast. So yeah, lots going on in this movie. Then we have Deadpool and Wolverine. Really, really important movie. Besides catching up with Deadpool and meeting our new Wolverine, we see the TVA, the Void, Alioth, B-15. Basically, we learn what's been going on with the TVA ever since Loki ended. Additionally, we meet Elektra, Blade, the older X-23, and Gambit. So yeah, lots going on in this movie. And then we have Thor, Love, and Thunder. So you probably know this is one of my least favorite movies, but you kind of got to watch it because not only do we see Thor's journey since Endgame, but most importantly, we meet Love, who we now know is going to be in the movie. And remember, she's tied to eternity, so she's going to play an important role in the movie, I suspect. Then we have Quantumania, which is my absolute least favorite movie, but I think you probably should watch it because it's where we learn about all the crazy Kangs that are out there, and I am really hoping Marvel wraps up the Kang storyline. I don't care if Doctor Doom just shows up and wipes them all out, or even if he just tells us he wiped them all out. But it would be important to watch Quantumania so we understand who Kang is and why Doctor Doom would go after him. Then we have Brave New World, which brings us up to speed on Sam and lets us know who Torres is, because again, you don't have to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier as long as you at least watch Brave New World. Then we have the Thunderbolts / New Avengers. Very important movie because the team is going to feature prominently in Doomsday. But also, if you skipped out on Black Widow and Hawkeye, you don't know who Yelena is and you don't know who Red Guardian is. And if you skipped out on Falcon and Winter Soldier, you don't know who John Walker is. Plus, this catches us up on Bucky and Ghost and introduces Sentry, aka The Void. So yeah, very important movie. And then finally, no surprise, we have the Fantastic Four. Obviously, this team is going to feature prominently in the movie, plus it's where we learn about their home universe, 828. All right, so then if we add in the additional things that I said should be rewatched, we have 19 total entries. So this is what I think everybody should try to rewatch before Doomsday. But we all know that everybody loves a good top 10 list, right? So can we get this down to the 10 most important movies, and then obviously the one show that you should rewatch before Doomsday? All right, this is not going to be easy, but we'll start with Infinity War because, you've already seen it, you know what happens in it, so you could probably just jump into Endgame to refresh yourself on that movie, which I do think is critically important. Then this is really painful to say because it's such a good movie, but you could probably skip X-Men Days of Future Past because you do meet all the key X-Men between X2 and the Marvels. Then you could probably get rid of Logan because everybody knows he dies, so really, you don't need to watch that before watching Deadpool and Wolverine. All right, this is starting to get difficult, but I'm going to throw out Far From Home and Brand New Day. Probably don't need to be watched because I just don't think Tom Holland is going to show up in the movie. But you still need to watch No Way Home because that's such an important multiversal movie. And of course, it brings us up to speed on both Toby and Andrew. All right, so then I'm going to say we can get rid of Quantumania because while I do think there's at least going to be a reference to the Kangs, I don't think it's going to be significant enough that you have to watch Quantumania because really there's nothing else in that movie that's important to watch per se. All right, so this is really getting difficult, but if the goal is to get it down to 10, we can probably get rid of Love and Thunder because the only thing we learn from that movie that I think is going to play into Doomsday is that, love is tied to eternity. And really, probably that's going to be a small plot point in the movie, and you could get by with just hearing somebody mention it during Doomsday and not have to watch Love and Thunder. All right, so this is really getting tough, but I guess get rid of Brave New World because we don't learn a lot in that movie. I mean, we meet Torres, but you can pretty quickly figure out he's Falcon, and we know that Sam gets the shield and becomes Captain America, and he still hasn't even formed the Avengers team yet, so yeah, we could probably skip that. And then, oh man, I got to do one more. Okay, this is really painful, but I guess I'm going to go Shang-Chi. I mean, you can pretty quickly figure out who he is in Doomsday. You don't need to have watched his movie necessarily. And then I suspect that the 10-ring signal is going to be a very small plot point in the movie. So, okay, this gets it down to 10. So that would make our list look like this. So these are the top 10 must rewatch. I think if you're talking to your friend or your spouse or, just somebody who's never seen anything since Endgame, tell them they've got to watch these. Just got to. But honestly, I'm still going to stick with this 19. I really, really think, if possible, watching all of these would be even better. Okay, so now I've told you what I think are the key 19 and even the key 10 movies and shows you should rewatch before Doomsday. Let me know your thoughts. I want to know what you think because I love to read and respond to everything. Plus, don't forget, January contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win that book or steelbook, and there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. Plus, I promised I would talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord. Every day listed here at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern, we watch a different movie or show as we head towards the December 18, 2026 release of Doomsday. So we have 2,600 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.